So, okay, Jan snacking up on a banana.
Yeah.
It's refreshing. Very healthy. Okay, I was completely wrong. It is a king's pawn opening. And Magnus now bringing his bishop out very early. So this avoids what we call the Petrov defense. That was Jan Nepomniachtchi's opening of choice in the World Championship match. And now white's bishop having come out allows this pawn to push forward without blocking a bishop in. So normally in openings we say knights before bishops. Not this time. This is the bishop's opening. And Jan, if he brings the black knight out from the queen side and develops it, we might see a transposition to the Italian game, something we saw with reversed colours yesterday. If he picks up a pawn, pushes it forward, that is maybe a more direct attempt for black to neutralise white's opening. What will Jan do? He brings his bishop out, and very sensible stuff by both sides so far. Magnus is going to move a knight. Which one is it going to be? I'm expecting his king's knight.
Yeah, I'm expecting his king's knight as well, as I think it's a bit of a big ask to develop the other knight. Although it would make a lot of juniors in the UK very happy. It's a specialty of people living in a county called Sussex.
Really?
Yes, the county where David's from. And they're all taught this certain line, and all the juniors play it.
Why is that?
Actually, there are 2 or 3 openings that in Sussex are just extremely popular. Everyone plays it with white and black. Meanwhile, white's knight's coming out here in this game. I remember when I was young, I had a coach. He was maybe the coach who had the biggest influence on me. I started working with him when I was 6 years old. It lasted for 3 or 4 years, the collaboration. And the openings he taught me, he would basically teach them to everyone else. And I guess because I was relatively successful with those openings, everyone started playing them, everyone took them up, and yeah, it became a badge of honour that our county were the specialists.
Wow.
In those openings. So, okay, meanwhile, a few moves. White's knight going to the edge of the board. It's going to trade itself off for black's dark squared bishop. So not the typical Italian game that we would usually see. Instead, white just going for a small strategic advantage of the bishop pair. And yeah, Jovanka, you gave me some good memories there. I'm having flashbacks, getting nostalgic.
And Magnus doing his favourite plan, which, as we've seen time and time again, he loves these flank pawn pushes, taking as much space as possible on the edge of the board. And I have to say, it is a rare move. Out of all the ones, it's probably around about number 8 in choice in my database.
OK, so there's pretty much no way Jan Nepomniachtchi would have studied this exact position. Maybe he will have studied something similar. Magnus, though, doing Magnus things, we've seen him before plenty of times push his pawns forward in front of the rooks on both flanks, especially on this queen side, just trying to gain space. Magnus loves his space because later in the endgame, his pawns are nearer their promotion squares. Maybe he's clamped down on some weaknesses. White's A pawn pushing forward, just fixing the black doubled pawns on the B file where they are. And, OK, some mysterious bishop moves from both sides. I'm struggling to understand those, to be honest. But either way, I'm expecting both sides to castle their kings to safety. And yeah, still a lot of tension. There we go, black's the first to castle. White does the same. And despite the fact this is relatively balanced, relatively level position, still, as usual, between these two, far from a draw. And black's knight, meanwhile, going back. It's going to step over to the king side, a very typical formation. Those 2 black knights are going to sit next to each other and act as guardians of the black king.
All right. Well, that black king looks super safe, tucked in with a bunch of pieces. Now, since you only played chess for a few years now, Katrina, what sort of tip has been the most helpful for you to sort of improve the most?
I think for me, it was all about the puzzles. I did a lot of puzzles when I started because that was actually the first thing I did when I went to university. I had time to do puzzles, and sometimes I didn't have time to do games. So in between classes, I needed to think about something else. I did a lot of puzzles, and then I saw patterns, and then it just grew on me with these puzzles, and I did a lot of them, and then a few longer games, but I played a lot of games as well.
Yeah.
So playing a lot, doing puzzles, and then I didn't read much about it. I watched a few YouTube creators, and then a lot of Twitch.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, that's what that's how I got into it.
Wow. Well, that's a formula you like as well, right, Ivanka, especially the puzzles.
I love the puzzles.
Yeah.
And what annoys me a little bit is that Magnus Carlsen did this nasty, Magnus Carlsen age 10, that was yesterday, did a nasty little tactic that, you know, I've been training every single day. You know, it's not a lie that I'm on Chess24 solving puzzles because I'm dying to get like 100% record and I always get one question wrong. And so I'm really annoyed that, you know, he tricked me with a puzzle, with a tactic, you know, and I just, but I definitely agree. Tactics are really good. And I also can recommend, you know, chessable courses, to be honest. I'm a big, big fan of that. You know, I try as often as I can to just go on to the Move Trainer and just drum in my opening repertoire. And I have to say, from these last 2 tournaments I played, I cannot fault my openings. Yeah. The problems happen much, much later. Every single opening has gone like a dream. And I've remembered things as well, because normally I get surprised and I'm like, oh, I don't remember what to do. And this time I was like, no. Chessable set. Okay, I'm giving away all my practical secrets here. Like, you know, it's quite obvious which courses I'm studying with. But okay, yeah. Then I remember what they write, and it's been very, very handy.
Okay, puzzles and chessable. You heard it here first.
Yes.
Meanwhile, some moves on the board. White now just pushing a pawn up, controlling some squares. We saw a similar theme in the first game. Katrina mentioned this white pawn push on the H-file, just covering some squares, stopping any pins. Also, I quite like what Black has done just from a strategic point of view. Black's dark square bishop got traded off for a knight very early in the game, and now in order to exert maximum influence, in order to fight for the dark squares, Black has put his central pawns all on those squares. So Black structure, rock solid. Also, this last bishop move hinting that Black might try and break through in the centre at some point and open things up at the right moment. White's bishop, White's light-squared bishop, is normally the pride and joy of the Italian game. But look at that white light-squared bishop. All of its pawns are also on light squares. It's a bit trapped. You've got to be a bit careful of that piece later in the game. So really, really complex still. It's as if both players, they just kind of just feeling each other out, tiptoeing around each other in every single game for the first 20 moves, and then it explodes. So I'm expecting the same this time, hopefully, for the game to explode a bit later. For now, both sides just marking out their territory, just putting their pawns on decent squares. And, OK, Magnus going for a pawn sacrifice. Ivanka, what do you think of this one? This pawn push happened just one move ago, or no, I mean, a few moves ago, and now he's pushed it one square further.
Yeah, I have to say, this was actually my first instinct, you know, because I feel like, you know, you should be doing something concrete here. Otherwise, Black will be the one who has the plans and White's just kind of drifting with the 2 bishops. So I do really like this. I mean, presumably the idea is simply if Black does get greedy and just captures that pawn that's up for grabs, you know, with either the bishop or the rook, then the plan is to lock that bishop out of the game and just push forward with b-pawn, 1 square, and then just say, OK, look at that. Your position is only as good as your worst placed piece. I don't know where that quote came from. I don't even know whether it's true. But if for here, it fits. So I'm going to stick with it and, you know, just play around that piece and try to win it. Simple.
Yeah, that's the thing. The bishop is trapped. You don't even need to win it on the next 3 or 4 moves. You could just win it long term. For example, at some point, White might step up the rook, slide the queen across, and then target this bishop. Yeah, I mean, this bishop, there's just simply no way it's going to escape. If Black steps the queen forward, attacking this white pawn in conjunction with the bishop, then White can just do the same. Slide the queen across, defend this pawn, and still no way out. This bishop completely caged. So I doubt we'll see Jan Nepomniachtchi get greedy and take up the challenge of capturing this pawn. Same thing if he takes with the rook, we would just see a trade. And the white pawn stepping forward would cage this bishop. I think that's too greedy. But if Jan can't do that, then Magnus's last move has been justified if Black can't capture this pawn. White might well just step up the pawn anyway, kick Black's bishop back, and will have gained time. Other ideas for White include sliding the queen across, maybe lifting it up the board, teaming it up with the bishop against the Black king. Suddenly, yeah, the more I look at it, the more I think maybe this pawn push is just really clever from Magnus. Some risk involved, but Jan, will he burn time even contemplating this capture, which might well backfire, or will he just accept that Magnus has gained some space with these white pawns and just continue developing the black pieces? I don't think as well, just to mention, I don't think black really should capture on this square. The idea, I guess, would be after bishop takes pawn to now win a pawn, because this bishop can't get trapped, but white could simply step back with his bishop, defending this pawn, and capture this guy at his convenience. We talked about doubled pawns. Maybe we need a rhyme for tripled pawns.
Wow.
Look at these triple pawns here, isolated as well.
I don't know a rhyme for them, but I think they're called drunk pawns.
Drunk?
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah,
Drunken pawns.
drunken pawns. Yeah.
I actually, so I went to Tata Steel to do some interviews with the players there, and on that day, Anish Giri, he actually had triple pawns in the game, and I talked to him afterwards, and I said, Anish, you had triple pawns? I don't think I've ever seen it. And he said, Kaya, you're so new to chess. So it looks strange to me, but I guess it's not that crazy.
It's kind of rare, though.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, when I think back to my own chess games, I've only ever maybe had drunken pawns, triple pawns twice in my life. And it's so rare to see them. I mean, sometimes they're useless. Sometimes they control a lot of squares, you know? It's like they're doing a little conga. They can't touch this bit, this bit.
That's true. The conga pawns, that's how we call it now.
So, yeah, okay. But in the meantime, I do have to draw attention to the position because Nepomniachtchi has, well, you know, he's kind of thrown down the gauntlet in a different way. He's kind of said, well, let's explode open the centre.
Yeah, and really combative, really challenging idea there from Jan Nepomniachtchi, not just letting the play happen on the flanks, but following conventional wisdom. When your opponent's pushing on the flanks, counter in the centre. And the evaluation bar doesn't like this. I do see that white can grab a pawn. Again, it will lead to a really weird pawn structure if white does do this and get greedy. But then again, if white isn't able to find something immediate, then Nepomniachtchi's idea will be justified, especially if this set of bishops, the light squared bishops, get traded. Black's queen coming to the centre, for example, black is doing great. So if we jump into the position, just to show the ideas for both sides, as mentioned, if bishop takes bishop, black is doing fantastic here. These knights, not just great defenders, but could jump into the game later with effect. Black's pawn's relatively strong for now. The alternative for white would be in this position to capture a pawn, get greedy, but after a trade on this square and after another capture, suddenly whose pawns are weaker? These doubled pawns look like they are ripe for picking after black's queen enters the middle, attacking the rook as well, attacking the pawn next to it. And white's a pawn up, but that pawn will drop. This one, to me, looks very healthy for black. I don't think black's ever better, but unless Magnus finds something special, something really magical, he's going to struggle to find an advantage.
Interesting. And now we do have the conga pawns that we now have introduced. And Katrina, from obviously streaming and playing at the same time, do you have like names for some pieces or some structures that you use while you play?
I think we've tricked like Kaya into thinking that names and rhymes are like mainstream, that everyone does them.
Do you have any catchphrases when you're streaming?
Yeah, like I call my pawns for princesses. Like they are my princesses because
I like it.
they often get into queens.
Yeah.
So I used to have it for them, but not like Harry or anything like that. I don't make names for them, but like it's funny when you have that because I see now as Simon has his course, he has like a Harry course. Yeah. So he's making fun of that, like, or not making fun of it, but he's making something that is fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, for beginners and definitely for kids as well, it must be so much easier to learn chess when, well, you can actually, imagine something or have some names for these pieces.
Yeah, definitely for players who are first starting the game, it becomes more memorable. And as Katrina says, it's just fun. And also one of the biggest streamers in the world, Hikaru Nakamura, I mean, he has nicknames for pieces. He calls pawns juices. And, I mean, he's just popularized chess with all these kind of fruity nicknames and things. And
fruity.
Yeah, I don't know. It's stuck in my brain these days as well. I never used to do it, but I do now. And talking of fruity moves, this pawn push by Jan Nepomniachtchi, after Magnus had run away from the bishop trade, which I mentioned would suit black, Jan has pushed in the center. He's really trying to just clarify everything, simplify everything, trade off all the pawns. The downside for black is that opening the position might favor white's bishops long term, but if black is able to eliminate the white bishops before the position becomes too open, then I think black should be fine. I must admit, I'm surprised the evaluation bar is so far in white's favour because, okay, it's not a huge advantage, but to me on the board, it looks like Jan is just doing everything right to neutralise Magnus's first move advantage, the advantage of the white pieces. Now we see more trades, and Jan just looking off to the side. He's comparing maybe 2 or 3 moves. He can take back this pawn that has just moved for white with his own pawn, with the black pawn, or he can capture white's dark square bishop with the black knight. And to me, both moves look pretty much fine. I definitely think Jan is doing all the right things here. And on the clock as well, very, very nice situation for the Russian player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree there, David. I quite like black's position. I mean, my instinct is actually to capture off the bishop because the position is relatively open and, you know, even though the knight is in a really good square...
And he does it.
The bishop might have long-term potential and, yep, you're right, he does it. And that's a beautiful light square bishop that black has sitting in the middle of the board. And I guess you have to capture with the knight, or can you kind of offer... Can you kind of think,
Can play
queen
a really
takes,
risky move? Yeah.
Queen takes and just kind of go into an endgame?
Yeah, just judging by Magnus kind of blinking a lot. Normally when he's blinking a lot, it means he's about to do something a bit surprising. Just from when I've played him, he's just calculating something counterintuitive. And I just have a feeling he might be tempted to take with the white queen here. Let's go into the position. Maybe if we can keep an eye on the players as well, we might see a reaction. There might be some surprising moves. But right now, white has to take this piece back. 2 options. Take with the knight, which is very safe. OK, he does actually do this. The reason I was maybe expecting the queen to take is because, yes, bishop takes knight will shatter the white pawn structure. But once the queens come off, we will see that maybe this pawn structure can be defended. Meanwhile, white having a very strong bishop here, stopping black's rook from coming out. Stopping black from challenging for some open files, and in a position like this, if white can maybe trade off the rooks, if white can get his king active, maybe a small advantage, because pawns on both sides of the board favour the bishop over the knight. But Magnus, he decided, doesn't want to take the risk of having these weak pawns, instead capturing with his knight. And now Jan seizing the bull by the horns, not just playing the safe move, pawn takes pawn. We've seen this time and time again from him in this final, playing brave chess, playing courageous chess, jumping in with his knight and going for the white king. Also, I mean, this queen is going to jump in with some serious checkmating ideas. A bit scary for Magnus now. He has to answer a serious question. Also, I don't think much risk for Jan because very minimum, later he can capture this pawn later anyway and restore the material balance. So Magnus has to deal with this square. The G2 square is attacked by black's knight and black's bishop. How do you deal with this? I'm not sure. Maybe you have to bring your knight to the centre, although this leads to massive complications as well. Blocking this bishop, but then you have to work out, for example, what happens if the pawn pushes to destabilise your knight. Really, really complex.
No easy choices, actually, you know, because the more I look at it, the more I'm like, oh, OK, you know, because if maybe, you know, the knight decided to move to a different square to block the diagonal to the F3 square, then maybe this is just, again, a red flag. You ignore the pawn that's up for grabs and then you just introduce your queen into the game. And suddenly you're threatening knight an even worse threat, which is knight takes pawn check. And there, it's like it's going to explode away all of white's cover. And yeah.
Just to show your idea, Jovanka, check, distracting away this white pawn from the defence of this white knight. Now the queen protects the bishop, and not only are you attacking the queen, but checkmate is coming. You're going to slide the queen across and trap this white king.
So I would strike that move out, actually, immediately. And then that leaves another last option, which is really passive. But who knows? It might be the only one, which is actually, well, I don't know. The bishop can come all the way back to its starting square.
Dropping the bishop back, keeping the king safe, defending the square, as you say, last resort, right?
Passive, yeah.
Yeah, I think if Magnus has to play a move such as retreating his bishop back, then the momentum will change in black's favour. At the very minimum, again, black could just take this pawn, and black has very active pieces. Look at these guys still at home asleep, not having made any moves really. And Magnus, big question for him. Is he going to block the attack against this pawn, or is he going to just ignore it and maybe go on the counter? Oof. Despite the evaluation here, the computer evaluation, Magnus is the one under an attack.
Wow. Do you, right now, looking at this game, 20 moves into it, also with the clocks ticking, will this one end up with a winner, or do you think it's most likely a draw?
We've said it before, right? Every time we say there's going to be a winner, it turns into a draw, even if it's a crazy position. So maybe if we say it will be a draw, then there'll be a winner.
That's true.
So, anything is possible in this game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still early days.
All right. Well, we do have those double pawns on the board. How did the Queen's Gambit sort of affect your interest, Katrina? Because that must have come out about the same time that you started streaming.
Yes, exactly, it did. I know that I watched the Queen's Gambit really, like, when it came out, I saw all of it.
Yeah.
Again, almost in one setting. So it was really interesting to see. I think it's good for women also to be shown in chess, and seeing that you don't have to be rich to play chess as well.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of different stories in this series, so I think it was a really good series for a lot of reasons. Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, me too. For popularizing chess, definitely. And women in chess. I mean, Ivanka, you obviously pay attention to women in chess as well. Is there someone, a young girl somewhere in the world that sort of the chess world is sort of hoping maybe will take that final step to the top of chess right now?
Well, there's one who everyone is very excited about, a young Russian girl called Alexandra Goryachkina.
Okay.
And she's been groomed as the next women's world champion. But I noticed that she's also playing in the strongest male events, open events, as they're called. And when we came to the Grand Swiss, for instance, there was one for the Open and one for women, exclusively for women. And she was playing in the Open. And she was also playing not in the Russian women's super final. She was playing in the male, the Open super final. And she did really, really well. And she's been groomed as big things. And so just to go to the board, because we saw Magnus actually played the last resort move that we didn't expect.
Yeah, I think Magnus maybe just one eye on the clock, realising he's really low on time already. He decided, OK, safety first chess, dropping the white bishop all the way back to act as a defender. And as mentioned, black just regained his pawn. He recaptured a pawn that he had given earlier in the game. So level material again, but if you compare the pieces, black's knight more active than white's knight, that black knight especially strong. Also black's bishop with eyes on both sides of the board, white's bishop just purely a passive piece. So maybe Magnus can equalize this position, hold it if he's accurate, but black definitely very happy right now. And Jan, he's leaning back. He's got to be very content with what he's been doing. Meanwhile, white's knight going in this direction, very surprising.
That's very surprising, totally. I mean, the first move I was thinking of was, oh, maybe I could decoy the light squared bishop and move it to another diagonal. But I see Magnus's plan, because at the end of it, black is not going to be better. Yeah,
maybe we can show this, because the reason we're surprised is the knight is going off towards the queen side, when actually maybe it is needed later to defend its king. And, OK, black brings the queen out. That's very sensible. We'll look at this in a moment. But after knight takes pawn, Ivanka's move, winning a pawn, temporarily at least, just deflecting away this bishop, as mentioned, from the defense of its knight. Suddenly, black is a pawn up, but after, for example, a queen trade, I'm not sure which black rook captures here, then this pawn drops at the end. And suddenly, Alice, the A-pawn, is going to march up the board very quickly and also promotes on a light square. So this would have been good for white. Let's catch up with the game. In this position, the queen came out, as mentioned. Now, actually, 3 potential attackers. This is a bit scary for Magnus. That's why he dropped back the knight. So the reasoning behind that knight move has been shown. He attacked the black bishop retreating, and now he is using this knight as a defender and harassing the black queen at the same time. So, yeah, I was only looking in one direction with that white knight. He kind of moved it over one side just to bring it back, centralize it. And now, yeah, it feels like Magnus has plugged all the holes with this white knight. This white knight doing a great defensive job and attacking job.
So no leakage.
No leakage, exactly. Not right now, at least. And when the black queen moves, I mean, it has to make a decision. Does she go this way? Does she just slide across? When the black queen moves, white has more time, maybe to develop the queen, starting to create some threats. So, yeah, Magnus actually finding a really nice maneuver to hold the balance. And there we go. The queen lines herself up with the white king. Very sensible. And if black gets the time, black would love to push one of the 2 pawns forward, either Harry the H-pawn or Freddy the F-pawn, to kick away that white knight from its square. As mentioned, that white knight is holding everything together, and Jan wants to destabilize it.
Now, this is sort of game 6 in the match here in the final. They played 4 games yesterday. They were all draw, so the first match was tied. This is the second game in the second match. They drew the first game, and if we do have a winner in today's rapid match, then that player will be the winner. If they draw all the games today as well, then they will head to tie breaks. And I'm mentioning that this is game 6 because it was game 6 in the World Championship match that Magnus Carlsen won to eventually also win the entire match. And that game lasted for 130-something moves. I mean, there's not that many pieces left on the board. Could this be that long of a game?
It would be surprising if it goes that far, but it could well be a long one. Meanwhile, this last move by Magnus, caused Jan to frown. Jan's still frowning. Again, I mentioned in the last game, Magnus's instincts, his spidey senses told him that there was something in the position. Now Jan's instincts are telling him the same. And wow, Jan has just given up a piece, sacrificed a knight. Now the black rook attacking the white queen, but if the white queen moves, white is simply lost. Black has actually got a checkmating attack. White has to just capture this black knight, bite the bullet, and it's actually a counterattack against the black queen. So white can play pawn takes knight, attacking the black queen, and white will be a piece up. The evaluation bar thinks Nepomniachtchi's just blundered. I think this is just a big risk that he's taking right now. He has seen this and he thinks he's getting to the white king. And there we saw white capturing, attacking the black queen. No time for black's rook to capture the white queen. Black would have just been a piece down there. And now, can Magnus hold on to his extra knight? Or is black's queen going to sneak in and checkmate the white king? It's one or the other. And, OK, the evaluation bar correcting itself here. I think this was white's only move, pretty much. So I'm surprised it's been so indecisive, the evaluation bar. There we go. It goes back in white's favour. This just shows how complicated it is.
Yeah. And gosh, this position is just crazy now, you know, in true Nepomniachtchi style. And the question I'm asking is, how is Nepomniachtchi going to justify this material sacrifice? I mean, is he going to attack the queen? Is he maybe going to bring the bishop down, attack the queen? What else to do? So
many choices. You could slide the rook across, attacking the white queen. You could push this pawn forward, attacking the white knight, trying to kick it away. Just to explain why Nepomniachtchi sacrificed a piece, just to show this last couple of moves. Here, rook takes queen wasn't possible, as mentioned, because actually the white rooks indirectly defend each other. Black would just have been a clear knight down, so you need to keep the queens on. And after this capture by the black queen, if the white queen had gone anywhere else other than the square it occupied, then the black queen would have indeed snuck in and checkmated white in the corner, utilising the bishop from afar as well. This white king would have been trapped. So maybe Jan underestimating something in this position. For sure he had seen this in advance, bringing the white queen forward, still keeping an eye on this important square. But maybe he thought he could just slide the rook across. Maybe he thought he was just winning here. But white can block this attack against the white queen just by sliding the knight back. And suddenly, I think white is holding everything together because the queen can also challenge the black queen. Still super complicated right now, but white is holding, and black needs to find something. I would be tempted to push this pawn forward, trying to destabilize the white knight, but maybe now white can not retreat it. White can just challenge the queens. Such a complicated position. I'm not seeing the justification. The evaluation bar doesn't see compensation here for black. But from a human point of view, it does still look scary. This white king, very, very open. Jan, he played it by instinct, but clearly he hadn't calculated the follow-up. Now he's spending the time, but it might be too late. He already sacrificed the knight. He should have thought for 2 minutes before sacrificing. And, OK, I don't see the follow-through. How about you guys?
I don't see any follow-through either because, you know, I was just considering, I liked your move of attacking the knight, but for the reason that you showed, that looked very, very convincing. And then if the black rook does step to the side to attack the queen, then maybe the knight can retreat itself. I'm just checking. Or maybe that leads to a draw. No, it doesn't lead to a draw because the queen can...
This check can be blocked by the white queen.
Yep.
I mean, maybe his best bet in this position, instead of giving this check, is to try and do one of Simon Williams and one of Magnus Carlsen's favourite things, go for a swinger, use one of these rooks and swing it across to try to get to the white king. It still looks pretty scary from a human point of view, I must say. For example, I'm not sure which rook you should use, to be honest, but for example, this rook, bring it up the board, threaten a nasty, really nasty check. How does white defend this? Wow, I mean, I'm I'm struggling even now to find a defense for white. Maybe you have to be really sneaky in some variations and drop your knight back, for example, hitting the black queen now, counterattacking, maybe threatening some back rank checkmates with the white queen. It's just a big mess. And maybe it's a mess that favors white, but there will be some tricks along the way. And Jan, very surprisingly, uses this rook to hit the white queen. And okay, there must be a reason he left this rook on a square. It's blocked. White's queen now hit, and it shuffles out of the way.
I'm very, very, very surprised by that move, actually. You know, out of the two rook moves, I mean, it's so much more logical to move the F rook.
Yeah, now
control two lines rather than control one. And
this guy's boxed in now.
Yeah, and Magnus now following all the rules. You know, what move can you now play as a consequence of black's last move? And the rook was on the d8 square. Now the queen can move to the d3 square. And the queen, as David's highlighted, can swing across when she wants to.
Yeah, and Jan has pushed Harry, this h-pawn marching forward. And, OK, this must have been his idea, but this is met by Magnus just retreating his knight. A really ugly passive square, but it looks fine for now. The only safe square, actually, because now a check from the white king, from the black queen to the white king is just blocked by the white queen. And if the queens come off, this knight will activate later and decide the game. White is simply a knight for only a pawn up, and there's no follow-through.
Yeah.
Simply material is going to decide this game unless Jan now finds something magical. Wow. Imagine sacrificing a piece and then realizing it's not really working. It's one of the hardest things in chess.
But is this Jan sort of attacking again, like we saw him do all day yesterday?
I think it's his instincts that are maybe slightly going wrong here. You know, he's like, OK, well, this will be dangerous. Let's not calculate. Let's just go for it. And Magnus is just using brute calculation just to work himself out of danger.
Well, Jan, he has said it in interviews because of course, his mind is also with everything that's going on in the world. Being in Russia, he's been worried about the situation. So he has said that he's been playing on intuition, and it's been working great for him. Is this maybe now the moment where his intuition failed just a little bit?
Yeah, the thing is with chess is that it's not just intuition, it's also calculation, it's also knowing what positions to go for, it's also endgame, it's also opening, it's just the whole storybook. So you can't just rely on good instincts, you have to back that up, especially when it comes to critical decisions like this, giving up a piece. There's no way back because, you know, it's do or die, roll the dice. Because if it goes wrong, it's going to go seriously wrong. And one thing I really wanted to mention about Magnus's position is take a look at the queen and look at how she's always within touching distance of her king. And this is a really good defensive kind of strategy. I just say this because I once played partner chess with my husband, and we had a similar type of position where our king was exposed, but we had a piece up, and he went off with his queen to the other side of the board, pawn hunting, and I was looking at him in shock and horror, and I was like, no, their queen should be there protecting her king. And yeah.
Well, I'm taking notes on that as well. Okay. Queen in touch with the king.
Yep.
Yeah, you need her just one move away from sliding across to the defense, and that's where she is right now. And if the white queen does get that time to slide across, trade herself off, it's just going to be game over. Magnus is going to win. But I was just looking at the amount of time spent as well.
Yeah.
Jan only spent 48 seconds to give up a whole knight. You can't calculate this type of position in 48 seconds. Maybe just a case, as you guys mentioned, trusting the instincts a bit too much there, not calculating. And chess, you've got to calculate concretely. You've got to see every single option, every single defensive resource for your opponent, especially before you make a big investment like giving up a knight. So, OK, right now he has been thinking for a long time, Jan, but it's too late. And, OK, he lifts his rook up the board. So, as mentioned, trying to swing that rook across to check the white king from the front, but this rook can just be traded off. And after this exchange, black hitting the rook in the corner, the white rook in the eye line of the black queen, but that attack has been blocked. And yeah, black is running out of pieces to go for the white king now. Running out of time, more importantly.
Yeah.
A black rook not contributing.
No, I mean, if the rook could kind of develop that skill that lets you walk through walls. that would be kind of, maybe that's a new idea for a chess variant, you know. At some stage you can have your rooks just, okay. Anyway.
If Black's rook could just turn into a knight just for one move and kind of hop over a pawn, kind of slide one square across and then teleport back into a rook, transform, then that would actually be winning for Black. But yeah, unfortunately not possible, not legal right now.
Yeah. Well, we have seen this situation before, I feel, in the final. The bar all the way over to Magnus' side, but then he has stepped wrong. Is that a big risk for him in this situation, or is it quite easy for him now?
Well, it's never going to be easy for him because his king is in danger. And until that situation is resolved, then he can sit back and enjoy the extra piece. Until then, it's just defense, consolidate, repair work all the way.
Yeah, and this position, it looks like he should be able to get there, but with 3 minutes on the clock, your king's slightly airy. Yeah, it's definitely not a given. In the last game of yesterday, Magnus, it felt like he just relaxed one move too soon. But if you look at his body language now, he's not relaxing at all. He's still focused on finding the best defensive moves. Yesterday, yeah, he was completely winning. He was actually just a rook up. And just 2 or 3 accurate moves, he would have won. But it's a similar case today. I doubt we'll see the same mistake twice from the world champion. And okay, now offering to trade off the bishops. Very sensible, trying to get rid of one of Black's best attacking pieces. That Black bishop has been cutting the board in half, controlling some key squares. Black now creating a pin, hitting that white bishop with the queen and with the bishop himself. But this can be blocked.
Yeah, I'm expecting White to offer a trade of queens, as you say.
Yeah, and White's knight could even step in the way. I think 2 good moves, 2 good defensive moves. And Jan looking off to the side. Sometimes he does that when he's trying to recall things, trying to remember. But now he's doing it because he knows his position is getting worse and worse.
I think he was even speaking something, saying something out loud, his frustration. You're probably used to that, Katrina.
Yes.
Streaming, you're used to speaking out loud, even if it goes good or bad.
Definitely, and I know that people are watching all the time, so I have to be careful sometimes with what I say, of course.
Yeah, that's true.
And I try to be tail-proof when I play my own games, but sometimes you feel like, oh, I should have seen that, and you just want to scream sometimes. From what I've heard, David is also, he likes to talk when he plays Bullet with himself. Like. So it's
I think we did have a little beep when you did lose to Magnus 10 play Magnus Challenge.
Potty mouth here. I need to control that a bit more.
Yeah.
And Katrina, as Katrina mentions, actually one of my neighbours knocked on the door one morning in my flat. Okay, Magnus just trying to trade rooks now, getting to safety. But yeah, one of my neighbours knocked on the door. He was like, oh, I think I heard a woman screaming. But it was actually me cursing myself after losing a bullet game. So, yeah, it happens to us all.
Yeah, chess will do that to you, definitely. It can be extremely frustrating. I have someone at home playing chess as well, and there are some marks in the floor, in the TV, some plates have gone. Yeah, yeah. All because of chess.
That's terrible.
I know.
It's you know, you just kind of, maybe the mouse, that's the only thing that's forgivable. The mouse.
We've actually seen Jan do that in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. He just threw his mouse.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the person that you take it out of.
Yeah.
Not plates, not computers.
All right. Well, will we see some mouse throwing from Jan after this game?
I don't think we'll see any mouse throwing because, in a way, Magnus has just played really smoothly. And I think the top players, they accept it when their opponents play well. Often the mouse throwing, the cursing, the anger comes when they feel they inflicted the defeat on themselves. And let's just catch up with the current game. Bishops came off the board, rooks came off the board. Black actually won another pawn in the process. So now a quick count shows that White has an extra knight, but Black has 2 pawns in return. So some compensation at least. But the problem is Black's pawns are far, far away from pushing or promoting. They are not dangerous at all. So White's knight at some point will start to coordinate with its queen, and the white queen and knight together should overwhelm Black's forces. The only thing you have to be really careful of here with White is to not go too far away from your king with your knight, because then some checks might come. But it feels like a distant dream right now for Nepomniachtchi to ever get that type of perpetual check that will save him. So White, meanwhile, centralizing his queen. This is what Magnus loves to do. And he's got all the time in the world to start improving the white knight. There we go, the white king super safe, tucked away in the corner. And this is why also having a queen in the middle of the board is so good. It stops potential checks from the enemy queen. And Jan, meanwhile, at least hitting a pawn. He's trying to make it as difficult as possible. He's fighting. Credit to him. And, OK, can we see Magnus messing this one up? I don't see it personally.
Maybe, I mean, but it does require a lot of help from Magnus. I mean, one idea that I can see in conjunction with this perpetual check is actually the creation of a passed pawn. Say, for instance, you just push your pawn, the b7 pawn, move it up 2 squares, and then, you know, instead of capturing back, you try to run with your own pawn. But unfortunately, now Magnus has put his knight in the centre. That's never, ever going to happen. So, OK, well, he tries.
The more pawns that do disappear, the closer black gets to a draw. If the queens come off at some point, if white only has 1 pawn remaining, maybe, you have some chances of eliminating the remaining white pawn. So if white's 2 pawns disappear, then a queen trade would actually save black. The problem is now, after this kind of transition that you mentioned, Ivanka, of the pawns being traded, white's knight and queen are combining, and they are the most fearsome attacking combo. And look, OK, this is a check, but once white's king retreats, or, wow, steps up the board, super brave by Magnus, the white knight is threatening some deadly checks already. Look how centralized the white queen and knight are. This is a really instructive technique from Magnus Carlsen. Centralized pieces, especially queens and knights, often cause a hell of a lot of damage. So white's king joining the fun.
I know, it's going to do a little bit of a king walk, isn't it? Because the knight and the queen are going to coordinate so beautifully on those dark squares, as you mentioned. King is now going to all the way up to the h6 squares. Who doesn't like a king walk? It's game over.
Yeah, wow. This is really reminiscent of a famous game in 1991 between Nigel Short and Jan Timman, where the white king did this. It went on the dark squares and it just zigzagged into the black position, and a nice checkmate at the end. The white king maybe is going to be the supporter. It's going to close the mating net around the black king, and that's why Jan moves his queen down 1 square. He's stopping the white king from continuing to advance. And OK, is there a deadly check? Can the white knight jump in with a check? Do you just push this white pawn forward? And this white pawn that's attacked by the black queen, that would be maybe too brave. But at the very minimum, you give a check with the white knight, and then you start to think.
Magnus, less than 2 minutes on the clock right now. What move would you make if you were white here, Katrina?
I think I would push the pawn, and then I would get my king out to h6, like walking the king, because I just had a mate like that, like last night or something.
Really?
Yeah. Where I walked my king up, and I don't think that the opponent thought about it, but then I brought my queen up to the g7 square right in front of the king, and then it was mate.
Yeah, let's just show that pattern, because pattern recognition is so important in chess, and it's coincidental that it happens the night before you see this by Magnus Carlsen. But let's keep an eye on the players as well. Black's queen came across, because if black had been careless, just to show this pattern, the white king is actually going to act as the attacker, and the white king stepping in is going to deliver this checkmate. And this would just be game over. And, OK, let's go back to the players, because Jan has stopped this idea with the black queen.
Oh, and 100 on the bar.
Yeah, we're about to see checkmate. Let's go back to the players. Can we get their faces on the camera? White's queen is just going to step across 1 square. It's checkmate next move. The black king is going to move. The white knight will deliver the killing blow. There we go, the first win of the final.
Wow, and of course it happens in game 6. Magnus Carlsen, he wins this game with the white pieces. He goes up by 1 point in the final, and that means Jan Nepomniachtchi, he has now 2 games. He has to win one of them to take this to tie breaks. If